Imagine the old fortress of wealth, brick walls, tidy lawn, a tenant paying the moat fee, and an owner asleep like a king with a spreadsheet. Lovely picture. But fortresses don't usually rot from cannon fire. They rot from damp in the walls, hairline cracks, and the bill nobody wanted to open. That's the mood around property now. Not a crash sermon, not apocalypse with a tie on, just a colder proposition. The machine that once made ordinary owners look like geniuses may be losing some of its easy magic. If prices are high, rates are higher, and rents can't keep pace forever, then the old promise gets awkward. You're not buying a golden goose. You might be buying a goose with arthritis and council notices. And that, my friends, is where the story gets interesting. For decades, the classic pitch was simple as a snag on bread. Buy property, borrow cheap, let inflation and time do the heavy lifting, maybe add a tenant, maybe get tax advantages, then act modest at barbecues while your equity balloons in the background. There was truth in that. In plenty of places, over long stretches, leverage plus falling interest rates plus expanding credit made owners look very clever indeed. But that script depended on conditions, and conditions change. A lot of people talk about property like gravity. It only goes one way, up. That's not analysis, that's religion with better brochures. What weakens the myth first is financing. When rates rise, monthly repayments bite harder, serviceability tightens, and the same income supports less debt. That matters twice. Buyers can't bid as aggressively, and investors discover the carry cost of an asset is no longer a cute side note. In a low-rate world, you could forgive a skinny yield because debt was cheap and future price growth was expected to rescue the whole operation. In a higher-rate world, the rescue helicopter is late, and maybe it's gone to the wrong suburb. Then there's affordability. If prices run far ahead of wages, demand doesn't vanish, but it changes shape. People delay buying, share housing longer, move farther out, pick smaller dwellings, or simply step away. That can support rents in some pockets, sure, but it also means the next buyer has less room to keep the price escalator humming. And here's the sneaky bit. When rent growth starts lagging the purchase price of homes, the investment logic thins out. Your yield compresses, your buffer shrinks, and every repair starts feeling like a personal insult. I might be wrong about the exact timing, but structurally, this is the issue. Classic property wealth building relied on fat tailwinds. Today, the margins often look thinner and the risks more visible. That doesn't mean all real estate is doomed, not even close. Prime land in constrained markets, well-located rentals with durable demand, specialized assets with strong cash flow, those can still work beautifully. But the lazy assumption that almost any property becomes a winning ticket if you just hold on long enough? That one's looking a bit second-hand, like a trail bike sold as only ridden on Sundays. Now let's talk about the part nobody puts on the glossy brochure: friction. Property isn't just an asset, it's a small empire of invoices. Regulation, tax, insurance, compliance, maintenance, vacancy risk, agent fees, legal standards. All these lovely little knives come out one by one. Individually, manageable. Collectively, they can gut the return. Across a lot of markets, landlords face tighter rules around safety, habitability, energy performance, eviction procedures, disclosure, tenant protections, and licensing or registration. Some of that is overdue and sensible. If you own housing, you own responsibility, full stop. But from an investment lens, better standards often mean higher capex and more ongoing admin. The asset has to earn its keep, and plenty don't, at least not the way the old spreadsheets assumed. Add taxes, transaction taxes, land taxes in some places, capital gains treatment depending on the jurisdiction, local charges, and suddenly the passive income line starts sounding like a joke told by someone else's accountant. Inflation makes this nastier. Owners often hope inflation lifts rents and therefore bails them out. Sometimes it does, partly, but repairs, labor, materials, utilities, strata fees, insurance premiums, and financing costs can rise fast, and not all of that can be passed through. Tenants have budgets too. So you get this squeeze. Your costs climb in real time, while your revenue climbs only where the market, regulation, and household income allow. That gap is where investment dreams go to have a quiet little funeral. And the house itself, the house. People talk about property as though the land and the structure are one smooth thing. They're not. Land may appreciate. Buildings, unless maintained, decay like everything else we touch with our clumsy human paws. Aging housing stock can turn an apparently safe asset into a serial expense. Roofs, plumbing, electrical systems, cladding, mold, insulation, windows, drainage. It's never one dramatic villain. It's a committee of expensive nuisances. Deferred maintenance only compounds the problem. Skip enough upkeep, and eventually the property stops being a cash flow machine and becomes a hostage negotiation. Climate exposure raises the stakes again. Flood, fire, storm, heat stress, coastal erosion. Depending on the location, these aren't abstract environmental notes anymore. They feed directly into insurance availability, premiums, lending appetite, resale desirability, and future compliance costs. A place can look profitable right up until risk gets repriced. Then whoosh, the numbers change. That's the nasty elegance of it. Nothing needs to collapse for returns to deteriorate. Costs just keep arriving, very polite, very legal, and very expensive. Like a concierge who never forgets your room number. Sorry, bit dark, but that's the maths. The next layer is demographics, which is where property bulls and property skeptics start circling each other like old pub rivals. Housing demand is not just population growth in a trench coat. It depends on age, income, household formation, migration, preferences, health, inheritance, and whether people want, or can afford, the same kinds of homes their parents chased. An aging population can cut more than one way. On one hand, older owners may hold valuable housing stock for years, limiting supply and keeping certain markets tight. On the other, aging can eventually mean downsizing, estate sales, assisted living transitions, or inherited properties coming onto the market. If a large inheritance wave meets weaker household formation among younger adults, who may partner later, have fewer children, or rent longer under affordability pressure, demand patterns could shift meaningfully. Not vanish, shift. That distinction matters like mad. Migration complicates the picture too. Strong inward migration can support urban rentals and housing demand, especially in job-rich cities. But internal migration may pull people toward cheaper regions, smaller homes, or markets with better climate resilience and lower living costs. Remote and hybrid work, where it sticks, can reshape what good location even means. I mean, not everywhere, not uniformly. Experts disagree on how durable those shifts are. Some think the old superstar cities will keep dominating because talent, capital, and services cluster there. Others reckon demand becomes more selective, punishing mediocre locations that once coasted on broad market momentum. That's really the expert divide in a nutshell. The bullish camp says housing remains structurally supported by scarcity, replacement costs, migration, and the enduring social obsession with ownership. Fair points. Shelter is not optional, and well-located property with real utility rarely becomes worthless. The more cautious camp says real estate should no longer be treated as a universal winner. Returns may be narrower, more local, more dependent on quality, climate resilience, regulations, demographics, and actual income growth rather than easy credit. Also fair. In other words, property may remain an asset class, but not a cheat code. So, sober forecast. Over the next 2 decades, the places most likely to struggle may be the ones with weak local economies, shrinking or aging populations without replacement demand, poor climate positioning, old housing stock with deferred maintenance, and prices that got way ahead of local incomes. Generic stock in oversupplied fringe areas could be vulnerable. So could buildings with heavy hidden capex and properties in zones where insurance and financing become awkward. By contrast, scarce, adaptable, efficient housing in strong labor markets may keep attracting capital, just with less room for sloppy decisions. That's the thesis, anyway. Not doom, not denial, just a reminder that even the safest looking fortress can become expensive to defend. Righto, I'll leave it there before I start sounding like I'm auditing your gutters. More soon.